G'day everyone, Paul here from Hopstar Computing Solutions, and this is a special video that goes along with my cheat sheet for Microsoft Excel. If you'd like a copy of this cheat sheet as a printed version, please check the links below. I've never done that before, so I'm going to have to work that out, how to do that, and maybe I have a downloadable version that you can purchase. So Microsoft Excel is a spreadsheet program included in the Microsoft Office suite of applications. It is ideal for entering, calculating, and analyzing data such as sales figures, home budgets, and so much more. I want to go over some bits of definition first. We have workbook versus worksheet. You can see I have Excel open here on the side. Up here we can see it's called Book 1, it hasn't been named yet, and on the bottom here we have one sheet by default. The example of a workbook is your workbook might be My Budget for 2024, and then you might have January, February, March, April, May, June, July as the different sheets within the book. We can add a new sheet at any time by clicking on the plus button down here. And I like to usually zoom in my workbooks so that my worksheets so that they're easier to see. The next pieces of terminology go together. We have column, row, and cell. So columns travel vertically and are headed by a letter. So column A, column B, column C, column D. The rows is the next one. They run horizontally and they are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Where a column and a row intersect, we have a cell. And these are the basic building blocks of an Excel spreadsheet. Each cell can only contain one thing. Up next is the formula bar up here. We'll come back to this a bit later, but basically whatever result we're getting in here, we'll be able to click onto it and see the way that we got the result up here. So if we have a formula doing some calculations here, we'll end up seeing the result, and then when we click in here, we'll see the formula that allowed us to get the result. We can also click in here to edit formulas. It's quite handy to be able to click in there. Nice long box that you can type stuff into. Next pieces of terminology, we have formula and function. Formulas use the 5 basic operators and cell references to perform calculations. Functions are a pre-written formula that can use cell references, formulas, variables, and the 5 basic operators and cell references to perform both basic and complex calculations. We're going to come back to those in just a moment. Arguments. These are the building blocks of making functions work. It might be a range, a statement to check if it's true or not, or a combination of things. These are always inside of brackets. A range is a good example of a type of argument. These are used to select a group of cells. It must have a colon, not a semicolon. For example, inside of brackets, B1 colon B4, which would be B1 to B4. So that would represent that range of cells. When it comes to moving around, there's a few ways we can do that. We can just left click whichever cell we want to go to. Right mouse click will give you options for that cell. When you complete a cell, when you finish typing whatever is going to be into it, if I put in something here, and I press enter on the keyboard, I complete the cell and I move down. As you're typing things in here, you should not be clicking into the next cell, although that does work, because that will cause you problems later on. If you're moving across the way, we can put in something there and press tab. This might be something you're making a list of people attending a party. Every time I press tab, it completes it and moves it over. We can press the home key on the keyboard, will take us to the first column in the row that we're in. So for example, I was over here and I pressed home, it took me over to here. This is very good if you're doing a long list of things. And the control home, holding down the control key and pressing home, always takes you back to the first cell. So if I go down a little bit and across a little bit, control home will take me back to cell A1. Control End is an interesting one. It kind of takes you to the last cell. If I hold down control and press end, it's really the conjunction of the two sort of last column and row where there's something in it. So, technically you could call that the last cell, but it's technically there because that's where they intersect. Page up and page down is an interesting one. It sort of depends on how far you zoomed out. At the moment you can see 1 through to 9. If I press page down on the keyboard, you can see 9's at the top there. If I zoom out a bit, control and mouse wheel is a good one for this. Press page down now, you can see I move a lot more per page press. The arrow keys can also be used to move around, so left, up, right, down. Very handy. Once again, do not use these if you're typing things in. If you're typing in pies here, don't use arrow keys. That can cause problems later on. Always press Enter or Tab. You can also hold down the Shift key and use arrows to be able to highlight certain cells. You can also do Shift and Enter to go up. You can also use Shift and Enter to move up a cell, and you can use Shift and Tab to complete a cell and move to the left instead. So Tab to move forwards, Shift Tab to move back. The mouse cursor in Excel can look like quite a few different things. See below to try and find each one when using Excel next. So the white cross is the most common one. We can use this one for selecting things, like so. Also, just as we left click on things, we're using the white cross. The black cross is an interesting one. It is actually used to do autofill. I can give you an example of this. If I maybe just go over here for a moment and I type in Monday, go out of the cell and back into it. We can grab this by the side here, drag down, and it will autofill for us. This can be used for quite a few things. The four-headed arrow allows us to move things around. If I, for example, highlight these and put my cursor on the edge, any edge but the corner, we can left click and drag and move things around. If there's things in the way, it will warn you, do you want to replace it? I'm going to click cancel and then move these things back up here. If, for example, now our column is not quite wide enough to have the information fitting in it neatly, we can change the column width by putting our cursor between the column headings, clicking and dragging. You can also double left click to get it to automatically resize to the widest thing in the column. By the same principle, we can put our cursor between row headings and change them as well. Although it's not a mouse cursor, the insertion point is important to mention here. While I'm typing, we have the insertion point flashing next to the last letter that we typed, and while we're in this mode, we can see that it actually says enter down here. We'll check that in a moment and see how it's actually different. Up here, while in edit mode, we can't do anything. If I press enter, we'll see we're now in ready mode, and I can now do things. In Excel, many times you have to get out of a cell and go back into it if you want to do it. I personally call that the Excel hokey pokey because you have to go out and back in again. So if we put chips here, you can see I'm currently in the mode. Can't click on anything. I will press enter and then I might use up arrow to go back in, and now I can do all different things to that cell. The last two go together as well. We have select column and we have select row. Just put your cursor on either the column heading or the row heading to be able to do that. Page 4 of the cheat book has some very useful keyboard shortcuts in here. I'm not going to go through all of these specifically. We'll sort of read each one. Holding down Control and pressing N will give you a new workbook. Control O will open an existing one. Control S is for saving. This one's very good. Just occasionally press Control S in your workbook to make up any updates. Control W will close the current workbook. If it's not saved, it will ask you to. Control F4 actually closes out of Excel completely. Be careful using these ones. Pay attention to whether or not you need to save your work. Control page down or page up will move you to the next or previous worksheet. When you have multiple sheets, I might try that one. Control page down or page up. We can actually hold down Alt and press different letters. This is more advanced. This actually allows you to change tabs without having to click on them. You can use Excel completely via the keyboard without the mouse at all. For cell formatting, we have quite a few different options. F2 is actually a common shortcut key on keyboards that allows you to edit things. So if I click in here and press F2, we've gone into that editing mode. I can also double click in a cell to edit it. I can also click up here in the formula bar and edit it as well. We can use some familiar favorites like Control I and B to do italic and bold. To align cells in the center, it's slightly different than it is in other programs. It's Alt and H, A, and C for left, center, and right. You can fill colors. I don't think I've ever used Alt, H, H before. Give that one a try. I think it might be Alt, let go, and then press H, H. Alt, H, H. Brings up here. And then we can fill it in from there if we want. So that's Alt, H. Twice. Interesting. We can do things like adding and removing borders. We can move to the next cell with Tab, obviously. Move to the previous cell, as we mentioned, with Shift Tab. There's more advanced ones here for selecting things. I'll let you have a try of those ones yourselves. Once again, we do recommend that we use Enter and Tab. I sort of reinforce this one again and again because it is rather important. A good habit to get into when using Excel is to press either Enter or Tab when completing a cell. If the arrow keys or mouse click are used to exit a cell while typing it in, it will sometimes select a cell to use as a reference. You can test this useful part You can test the useful part of this by clicking on a cell when you do want to select a cell reference or even a range of cells. Try this. Start typing the formula equals sum open bracket, then left mouse click and drag over the cells you want to add together. Finally, add the closing brackets. So if we were to come over here and put in some sort of fee that they had to pay, maybe we have $10, $15, and $20 here. I can say equals SUM, open bracket, left click and drag, let go, close the bracket, and then press enter. We can also say something like, well, this cell plus 12, making up random numbers here, and then we get the answer there. Once again, as I mentioned before, when we click in a cell here, we can see the result, and up here in the formula bar, we can see the answer. While I'm in the cell, as I mentioned before, we can press F2 to edit. That brings up the formula again, and we can press Enter or Tab to finish it off. Just a quick one here. Tips on shortcuts. There are many ones that are universal across all the programs, like Control B, Control C, X, and V for copy, cut, and paste. There's also some that do not work in Excel, like Control E, like I mentioned before, in Word, that will center your text, but in Excel it performs a flash fill. Interesting, yes? Here we have 4 pro tips. If you're entering information or formulas, etc., a lot of the features are not available. As I mentioned, when you're typing in here, a lot of these things are grayed out. Press Enter or Tab to complete a cell, or press Escape to cancel your action. This is one not a lot of people know. If I start typing something in here, like equals sum, adding these up and go, oh, you know what? I don't need this. I can press the Escape key, and it cancels whatever I'm doing. If I'm editing this, you'll notice my formula doesn't actually update until I finish. But if I change my mind, I can just press Escape, and it goes back to whatever it was. Quite handy. Once again, you can use Shift and Enter or Shift and Tab to move up or left one cell. So if I wanted to type something in here, I'm going to type in fizzy down to here and type juice. And I can press Shift Enter to go back up to that cell and then maybe type something else. I don't know. Who brings milk to a party? I don't know. That's a bit weird, isn't it? Once again, you can double click to edit. You can press F2 to edit. You can even click up here to edit. And remember that if you ever feel lost, Control Home will take you to home, which is hopefully a nice safe place for you. Control Home takes you back to the start. We mentioned before, while we're talking about the terminology, about the basic operators, another thing we also need to be aware of is BODMAPs. Like a calculator, Excel can execute equations that add, subtract, multiply, and divide. The great thing about Excel is that we don't really need to use our brains to work out maths problems. That's particularly good for me. Excel knows the order of operations, the correct order on how Excel knows the order of operations, the correct order on how to work out the right answers in maths. Some of you may have already heard the term BODMAS, the order of operations. B stands for brackets, O stands for order of power, D stands for divide, M for multiply, A for addition, and S for subtraction. A very useful application of this is the ability to put any formula that you want to be calculated first inside of the brackets. For example, equals A1 plus A2 and then divided by 2. Whereas without the brackets, it would be dividing A2 by 2 and then adding the contents of A1, giving you potentially a very wrong answer. Some quick tips when you are doing maths and formulas in Excel, some things that can help you to improve your accuracy. In the following pages, we'll be looking at some very cool functions used to make life in Excel more interesting. Whenever working with formulas or functions, it can be easy to make mistakes. Below are some useful tips for checking your work. 1. Check your references. Double-click to highlight the references cells and verify correctness. For example, if I come over here and I double-click in here, I can see this one is referencing E6. If I double-click in this one, we can see because we're using a range, it highlights all the things in the range. Number 2, watch for mix-ups. Correct references matter. For example, equals C3 minus C2 is not the same as equals C2 minus C3. Putting them in the correct order is often important. Breaking it down for number 3, divide complex formulas into smaller parts for precise review. If you're having a function here that it maybe has multiple parts into it and it's not working, putting them into separate cells and breaking it down can be a good way to work out what's going wrong. Estimate results for number 4. Use experience to ballpark expected answers. If you've got 8 items and they're supposed to be 99 cents each, then your answer should be slightly less than $10. If you're getting $800, you might have entered something as $88 instead of 88 cents. Number 5 is confirm function arguments, or args for short. Ensure all required function arguments are included. We'll come back to that one in a little bit. Number 6 is the order of operations. Once again, remembering the BODMAS, make sure that things are in the correct order. Formula view. This one is a little bit tricky and is actually missing a symbol here in the book. So live update here. Control and the tilde key. So the tilde key or tilde grave key is up underneath the escape key, top left hand corner of your keyboard. If I'm in Excel and I hold down Control and press that key, and we have to move over here, it actually displays the formulas and functions rather than the answer. This is a good way to try and see if there's something going wrong. Control and grave. Hashtags. You'll see these when Excel can't display all of the numbers inside a cell. Make your column wider. So Excel is not very fussy when it comes to letters. If I make this shorter, it doesn't care. It's quite happy if I was to move these, for example, over here. Then it doesn't really care that Wednesday can't be displayed. The actual word does not hang over into the other cell. It's always contained in just the one cell. It's just a visual representation. However, when it comes to numbers, if I make this one a bit bigger as well, if it can't display all of the numbers, you get the hashtags instead. And that's because if you're trying to order 100 boxes of paper, but it's reduced it and you can only see a 10, that could be very bad. So numbers are always need to be completely shown. Otherwise you get the hashtags. Last one, number 9, the error name occurs when you try and add 2 different types of data. For example, a word and a number. Check your references. So if I try and say equals juice plus a number, it's value, not number. There you go, another live update. So it's actually a value. The other one, the name, is a different type of error. Remember, practice improves formula writing. Even experts face errors. Locate issues for correct results. For page 5, we actually now move into a landscape view. If you have this as a physical copy, then this is when you would turn your book around. The idea of this section is that for reference sheets, it's actually quite handy to have these in landscape. You could stand them up against some sort of book holder. And here we're going to be looking at some of the symbols you might need to be typing into Excel. The 5 basic operators, as mentioned before, are division, multiplication, subtraction, addition, and exponent. Now in Excel, to do division, we need to do a /. For multiplication, it's the asterisk. For subtraction is the minus. That's the same as what you would expect. Addition is the plus, and exponent is called the caret symbol. You can get each of these by doing the / key, Shift and 8 on the keyboard. The minus and plus symbols are just by themselves, and the caret symbol is done by holding down Shift and pressing the number 6. It is good to note that these first 4 are actually found around the number pad on your keyboard. So if you have your number pad, you should see that they exist around there somewhere, assuming your keyboard or laptop has the number pad. Other symbols we have here, we have equals to. We also need the equal symbol at the start of each formula or function to tell Excel that it's time to do some math. We have the greater than and less than symbol. We also have greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, and also not equals to. Finally, over here we have open and close brackets. We have the colon. We have the double quotation marks, the single quotation marks, and then double quotation marks. Once again, as mentioned before, we have the definition for formulas and functions there. I don't think you need me to read those again. And now we get to some more of the interesting stuff. Okay, so we're coming back to functions. The anatomy of a function, and we're going to use the example of equals sum B1 to B4. Let's actually move to our second sheet over here. And I'm going to type up what I can see over here. So we're going to do 5, press enter, 7, press enter, 9, press enter, 15, press enter, and 3, press enter. So because we're using this example, we're going to be using it from down here. So the function is sum, the description is return the total of a selected cells added up, and the example is equals sum A1 to A5, and the result in this case will be 39. So I'm going to type that in here. I'm going to do it all in lowercase because Excel doesn't actually care if you do your lowercase or uppercase. It will actually just do it for you. Automatically it's going to change it to capitals after I press enter here. So as we mentioned, 39 is our answer. Equals sum A1 to A5, adds all these up, and the answer is 39. I'm going to delete this one just by pressing the delete key, and we're going to do the next one, average. Add the individual numbers together and divide by the number of entries to calculate the average. So I'm going to type what you see here. I'm going to type equals average open bracket, and once again, as I mentioned before, I can actually, rather than typing it, just click and drag to select that as a range, close the bracket, and press enter. 7.8. So these things added up, divided by 5, will give you 7.8. Delete. Next we have count. Count how many numbers exist in a range. So this one's an interesting one. It's not adding them up. It's actually counting how many numbers are in this range. The answer should be 5, because that's a number, that's a number, that's a number, that's a number, and that's a number. So there's 5 numbers in that range. The next two kind of go together. We have min and max. You might be starting to get a bit of a clue here what's going on. The minimum of this range will give us the smallest number. 3, correct. And I can also just type straight over this. If I go equals max, I'm typing over what was previously there. Open bracket, give it a range, close it again, and press enter. Excellent. Now we're going to have a look at some different types of if statements. The numbers I am using here can be gotten from page 8. Up here I'm going to put in equals if, open bracket, A1 is greater than 60, comma, which separates our arguments. Anything that is not a cell reference or a number needs to be inside quotation mark, so Excel knows to sort of print that to the screen. And what we have here is it's saying if A1 is greater than 60, that's our first criteria or argument. We put a comma between it. If it's true, it's going to output pass, and if it's false, it's going to output fail. So we have pass. This is a great example where we can use the autofill handle to fill this down. There we go. And because 57 is less than 60, that's a fail. The next one is count if. It's like count, but only if a condition is true. Once again, we can type it all in lowercase, count if, open bracket, and then this one we have a range and the criteria. So count if in this range, comma, open quotation, is greater than or equal to 60, close and close. Remember, anytime you open brackets, you need to close them. Anytime you open talking marks, you need to close them as well. So 4. So it's only counting numbers that are greater than 60. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Perfect. Next up is sum if. Once again, we can actually also see here, this one actually has 3 criteria, a range, criteria, and the sum range. In this case, we only need the first 2. We can do the range, which is this. And then we want the criteria, which is, in this case, greater than 60, close quotation, close bracket, and press enter, 291. So if you add up the numbers, which are greater than 60, so it excludes this one, if you add up that one, that one, that one, and that one, you get 291. Up next, variations on the ones we've already done. Instead of count if, this one's count ifs with an S on the end. Quite difficult to say. Count if S, open bracket. Now this one is getting a little bit more tricky. This one actually has 4 different criteria or arguments that we need to do. We need the range. We want the first one, greater than 60, close the bracket, comma. Then we need the range again, because this could be a different range somewhere else for a different criteria. Less than 90 and close. Excellent. 3. So it's counting numbers that are meeting both criteria, and there's only 3 numbers that are more than 60 but less than 90. So that one, and that one. And the last one for this page is sum if with an S on the end. And it works in a very similar way. This one has 1 extra argument. It actually wants to know what numbers it's going to add together if then the criteria are met. And we're going to use the same one here, comma, and now we're going to do the first criteria, greater than 60. And then we need to do another comma, specify the range again, because once again this could be somewhere else, could be a different range. And the criteria, we're going to use the same one as before. And close the bracket. And I've mistyped something here, and this is very common and easy to do. Let's see if we can work out what we've done wrong here. Equals sum f s, open bracket, the range to add together, and then the range, comma, what's the criteria, open and close, comma, range again. There's a comma missing from right there. Very easy to do. And there we go. I was trying to work out why my answer was 90 then, 95. I've done greater than 90 rather than less than 90. There's only one number that's greater than 90, so there we go, 196. So that's, once again, when we're talking about finding errors, like my answer should have been, more than 95. A great example of that. So, totally did that on purpose, of course. As I mentioned, I got the numbers for this from page 8. Important information, the criteria, when not a cell reference, should always be inside of the double quotation marks. For example, quotation marks greater than 60, close quotation marks. Every time you open a bracket or quotation marks, you need to close them again. And there's a nice little example there. Criteria always separated by a comma, for example, and then you can see the 1, 2, 3, 4 different commas there to signify the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different criteria. Also, when using the ifs function type, you can string multiple criteria together and have more than just 2. For example, And here we can see there's the first one, that's the second one, and that's the third one. And you can keep on going, as many as you need or like. Finally, there are more ifs lurking around, for example, average ifs, so you can have a dig around and see what you can find about them. Up next we have some very useful text functions. The first one we have is trim, and once again on page 10 you will get the actual examples that I'm working from here. For trim, we simply say trim, open bracket, and whatever cell we want to trim. In here I've deliberately put 2 spaces here and 3 spaces in here. Close that, and it's reduced it down to just 1 space between each word. We'll find out why these are useful in just a moment. Up next is concatenate. Please note that I'm currently using Excel version 2019. If you're using a more recent version, you can probably use concat for short, and you can even do a more advanced one with just the @ symbol. Got some examples there. Because I'm using an older version, we need to use a longer one. This one is designed to combine text together. So in this version, I need to type the full word, concatenate, open bracket, and then the first one, a comma. If you want anything between them, we can actually put in, we're going to put in the ampersand symbol, another space, a comma to finish that one off, and then the second thing we want to do, close the bracket. There we go, oranges and lemons. And just to demonstrate what I mean, if I come in here and I change that to be a hyphen, for example, looks like that. But just remove that completely and put just 1 space, then it works out like that. Very cool. An interesting one here is left and right. I can say equals left, open bracket, choose the cell and how many characters we want from it. Example 3, we get the first 3 letters. If we do right, and the same cell, and same number, we get the last 3 letters. Up next is lower and upper. If we say lower, and what cell we want, we get the lowercase version of the letters, and by the same means, upper gives us the uppercase letters. As I mentioned, page 10 has the examples that I've used here. Text functions are interesting in Excel. If you handle a lot of data, then you might find them useful. Sometimes when information is brought into Excel, it's not always in the cleanest condition. Removing extra spaces, converting it to or from one case to another, and joining text together shows an advanced understanding of time-saving practices. More text functions can be found in Excel by going to the Functions tab and then checking out the text drop down there. So you see here I'm in the Formulas tab here. Under text, there's quite a few. Up next we have a more complicated one called VLOOKUP. This one is a favorite amongst more experienced Excel users, and it is used to check the first column in a range. If a criteria is met, then return the corresponding information on the same row from the selected column. As we can see here, I've expanded upon the 4 different criteria in this one. But let's actually just type it up first. In here, I'm going to use the example from the book. VLOOKUP, open bracket, A7, that's the thing that we're looking for. We want the range, which includes not only the thing we're looking for, but the actual result we're looking for as well. So that's our index array. Another comma. The next one is one of the confusing ones. It's the actual column we're pulling from. In this case, it's column 2. And whether we want it to be an exact or partial match, we want it to be an exact match, so that's false. Let's press enter. We'll come back and explain this in a moment. What we're expecting to see is the thing that's in column 2 that matches the word bananas. So we should get the number 10. Beautiful. Let's have a look at this. Equals VLOOKUP, open bracket A7. So we're looking for the word bananas. Where we're looking for it? In this range. That's the second part. In this range, we want to draw it from the second column. So this is column 1, column 2. I know that's kind of confusing because columns are supposed to be done with letters, but when we're doing VLOOKUP, that's how it works. So that's the number 2. And then finally, false says we want an exact match to the first thing we were looking for. So exactly bananas. If we had banana and we had that set to true, then it should find the result still. But usually 99% of the time, you're going to want to leave that as false. I can also change this one to the word grapes. And now it's matching that one there. How cool is that? Lucky last is HLOOKUP, pretty much the same as VLOOKUP, except this time we're looking for information horizontally. HLOOKUP, we are looking for whatever's in here. We are looking within this range. This time the number represents the row, so if I had many rows, it'll be whichever row I want in the index. I want row number 2, and once again, same thing, false, I want an exact match please. And we get 50. I change this to apples. It equals 20. We can actually try. Let's set this to be true. We still get 20. And if I change this to apple, it still works. And if I change it to orange, rather than with an S, oh, the orange has given me the answer of 30 instead of 40. So that's a good example where we definitely do want to be leaving this as false. Wonder where I got 30 from. Oops, I've done something wrong there. Why am I getting a funny answer now? A2, range 2, false, not applicable. You can just use Control Z, take it back to when it was still false. There, fixed it with Control Z. But yeah, I wonder where I was getting the other answer from. That was interesting. Was it grapes close enough to oranges? Very strange. You have reached the end. This is a very special thank you to you, the reader and viewers. Your patronage helps me to fund the next project and encourages me to make more high quality and useful training materials and cheat books like this one. I would also like to dedicate this cheat book to my father, Mike, to whom I attribute my love of computers. My deepest thanks go to him for bringing them into our home when I was a kid. Feedback, comments and requests can be sent through to my email address or via the Discord channel, which can be accessed through my Linktree QR code or link. Thank you very much everyone for watching, and remember, never stop learning. See yous.